Hi, everyone. We are group number 3 for our presentation. Our focus group is incarcerated youth and their families. Our group members are Kathy, Allison, Destiny, Taylor, and Sarah. We will be providing a description of the family type and or group, a review of the literature regarding our group, an assessment of the strengths and limitations of the literature in this area, a discussion of the tools and techniques associated with the group or family group therapy sessions, and lastly, a role play involving an incarcerated youth and their family in a group setting. Kathy is going to start us with section number 1.
On any given night in America, nearly 50,000 youth under the age of 18 are confined in facilities away from home, 2/3 of which are in correctional-style facilities. According to the nonprofit Prison Policy Initiative, this number has decreased over the last 20 years, but the United States still incarcerates the most children in the world. Sarah Hinger is a senior staff attorney with the ACLU's Racial Justice Program.
The United States far outpaces other countries in detaining and otherwise criminalizing young people. And that has, again, similar to the adult system, a disparate impact on youth of color who are disproportionately represented in contact with the criminal justice system.
But why is that? And why are so many youths arrested in the first place? Michael Corriero is a former New York State Supreme Court justice.
At the turn of the 19th century, we created the world's first juvenile justice system. The idea behind that was that as a society, we had a moral obligation to recognize the developmental differences of children as compared to adults.
But the idea of rehabilitation through the prison system isn't working. In 2012, the Department of Justice began tracking formerly incarcerated people of all ages. The latest report, released in July, found that of individuals arrested at age 17 or younger, 71% have been rearrested within 3 years of their release. That number climbed to 80% by year 5.
What is juvenile detention? A short-term incarceration primarily used for arrested youth prior to a court hearing. It is a pretrial detention that is used when a court believes a youth is at risk of committing further crimes or fleeing, or a small number of youth are detained after their case has been heard. Adolescence and incarceration. The juvenile justice system handles cases for defendants age 18 or under. However, some states make exceptions and prosecute younger people as adults in certain cases. Over 48,000 youth in the United States were in some type of juvenile correctional confinement in 2015. And many are detained within restrictive correctional style facilities, and thousands are held without a trial. The demographics, racial disparity in youth incarceration. Among incarcerated youth, the juvenile justice system confines Black youth at over 4 times the rate of white youth. Recent statistics report 14% of all youth under 18 in the US are Black, of which 42% are boys and 35% are girls. American Indians comprise less than 1% of all youth nationally, with 3% girls and 1.5% boys in juvenile facilities. Racial disparities are also evident when decisions are made to transfer youth from juvenile to adult court. In 2017, 54% of the Black youth compared to 31% of white youth were transferred from juvenile court to adult court. So where are youth incarcerated? So many are locked up before being tried. 2 out of every 3 detained youth are held in the most restrictive facilities in juvenile jails and prisons, or in actual adult jails and prisons. More than 9,500 youth in juvenile facilities, or 1 in 5, are locked up before a hearing to await trial, even though they haven't been found guilty or delinquent. Another 6,100 are detained awaiting disposition or placement. How many youth are locked up for the most minor offenses? The juvenile justice system confines large numbers of juveniles for minor offenses. For nearly 1 in 5 youth in juvenile facilities, the most serious charges against them are technical violations, 15%, or a status offense, 4%. These are behaviors that ordinarily wouldn't result in confinement except for their status as probationers or as minors. Most youth are held in correctional style facilities. 92% of youth are in locked juvenile facilities. According to a 2018 report, over half of all detention centers use mechanical restraints like handcuffs, leg cuffs, restraining chairs, straitjackets, etc. The remaining long-term secure facilities and detention centers isolate youth in locked rooms for 4 hours or more. Some are in large facilities. 81% are confined with more than 21 residents. Over half, 51%, are in facilities with more than 51 residents, and more than 10% are held in facilities that hold more than 200 youth. Some are in long-term facilities. About 66% of youth are held for periods longer than a month. About 24% are held over 6 months. And almost 4,000 youth, or 8%, are held for over a year. Youth incarceration and recidivism. The cycle of youth imprisonment. For many adolescents imprisoned in the juvenile justice system, recidivism is a major problem. After being released, many adolescents return to their criminal behaviors. While incarcerated, adolescents often do not have the chance to work on dysfunctional family dynamics when returning home. They often confront high levels of anxiety and tension from ongoing family conflicts that put them at risk for relapse, reoffending, and a return to prison. Up to 85% of all incarcerated youth become repeat offenders, with this cycle often repeats until adolescents reach 18 years of age, at which point they transition into adult facilities. Youth and behavioral issues. Studies have shown that adolescents who experience childhood behavioral problems are often at risk for entry into the juvenile justice system. These adolescents often struggle with processing social cues and other cognitive deficits like a lack of problem-solving skills and hostile attributional bias, in which incarcerated youth frequently view the world as unfriendly and use aggression or coercion to meet their needs and goals. As adolescents, they usually feel alone, fear negative judgment from others, and are full of feelings of self-blame. To manage overwhelming feelings of negativity and inability to self-regulate and cope with peer rejection, these adolescents invariably resort to self-medication with drug and alcohol abuse and/or high-risk outlets like sex, gang membership, and violence, putting them at risk for falling into the juvenile justice system. Mental illness and juvenile delinquency. The issue of adolescent incarceration and juvenile crime has drawn increasing attention at the national level. However, insufficient attention has been given to the issues of mental illness among incarcerated youth. While neglect of emotional health has been well documented among youth, emotional problems are often disguised as delinquent behavior. Current statistics show that 7 in 10 youth in juvenile justice systems have a mental illness. The majority of incarcerated youth have at least one mental health disorder, with as many as 7 in 10 youth struggling with mental illness. The prevalence of mental health illness among youth in juvenile justice settings is significantly higher than among their peers. Studies show about 20% of youth ages 13 to 18 in the general population suffer from some type of mental illness. Moreover, estimates of conduct disorders among delinquent youth is 10 times higher than among non-delinquent youth. While mental health disorders do not necessarily lead to delinquent or criminal behavior, research focusing on the relationship between mental health disorders and crime has revealed that youth with at least one mental health disorder have committed a disproportionate amount of criminal or delinquent acts. Research has shown that more than 3/4 of youth in the juvenile justice system have been diagnosed with multiple disorders. When comparing youth with up to 3 mental illness diagnoses, higher numbers of diagnoses were associated with a higher chance of committing a crime. Youth with multiple mental health disorders present unique challenges to juvenile justice settings, since their needs are usually greater and more complex than the needs of youth without mental illness. Responding appropriately to these higher needs requires effective interagency and departmental collaboration, continuity of care, and the recruitment and retention of qualified mental health professionals who are trained to treat multiple disorders. Mental illness and juvenile delinquency when it comes to family. A contributing factor to adolescent delinquency is the behavior of the parents and caregivers who struggle with their own mental illnesses. Harmful parenting practices that negatively influence parent-child relationships include harsh, lax, erratic, or inconsistent discipline, monitoring, and supervision. This dysfunctional interaction most likely begins in early childhood and is bidirectional. Adolescents tend to ignore or resist parental aversive behavior, which leads to further escalations, creating a cyclical coercive cycle between parent and child. Adolescents caught in these situations are more prone to poor adjustments, addiction, and criminal behavior. Moreover, problems at home, such as these, carry over to the relationships with peers and teachers. All of these risk factors exacerbate delinquent behaviors and increase adolescents' risk of entering the juvenile justice system.
A review of the literature about incarcerated adolescents. There are multiple approaches to group therapy with incarcerated adolescents that have demonstrated successful results. Theories and programs have been modified to align with the experiences of incarcerated individuals, specifically adolescents. The recidivism rates for incarcerated adolescents trend very high, averaging between 65 to 85%. The following methods have resulted in better mental health for incarcerated individuals, better environments for the incarcerated staff, and lower rates of recidivism. However, effective group therapy treatments can be expensive to execute and require additional resources and staff that many juvenile correctional facilities are not willing to spend funds on. Research identifies many risk factors associated with the group's population. There are underlying issues and reasons that can lead to adolescent delinquency. A risk factor that can affect the population is growing up in poverty or more violent areas, which can attribute to higher rates of offenses. Exposure to maltreatment and neglect can also be a risk factor associated with adolescent delinquency. Behavioral risk factors can include delayed language development, antisocial tendencies, hyperactivity, and substance abuse. A highly reported and effective form of therapy for incarcerated adolescents is dialectical behavioral therapy. DBT emphasizes a dialectical or logical discussion of ideas and opinions as an approach to changing behaviors that encourages the individual to accept themselves and their present circumstances while reshaping their cognition to positively affect the person's future responses. The facilitator implements a type of dialectical thinking that is intended to interrupt dichotomous or right versus wrong thinking patterns. In a group setting, this approach consists of 4 core modules that include mindfulness, interpersonal effectiveness, distress tolerance, and emotional regulation. The mindfulness component emphasizes the group to focus on the present and encourages self-regulation through self-awareness. The interpersonal effectiveness model teaches interpersonal skills that make it possible to navigate conflict with the group productively. The distress tolerance model communicates methods and tools used to self-soothe and tolerate stress to avoid acting impulsively. Lastly, the emotion regulation model teaches identifying and communicating emotions productively and supporting positive emotions. These modules work together to teach adaptive behaviors and responses. The group process for DBT includes a contract during the orientation phase about the time period of the group and the termination date. Monthly follow-ups are conducted for 4 to 6 months following the program, which helps to encourage skills participants learned in the group. The purpose of the group is to support skills to help regulate emotional, behavioral, interpersonal, and cognitive responses to triggers. It is critical that the group leader have the expertise and knowledge to adapt and adjust to the needs of the group. Shelton identifies a formatted version of DBT known as DBT-CM, or Dialectical Behavior Therapy Corrections Modified. That offers a modified version of the approach specifically for instances in correctional scenarios. This adjusted version includes adaptations to easier vocabulary and modifications to address reading and learning problems. This can also include more informed environments that offer textbooks and materials that cannot pose dangers in the correctional environment, such as metal bindings or pencils that have been approved by this facility. Also, updates to the program that are formatted to be more relevant for members' daily experiences in the correctional facility and specific skills that are necessary for reentry into society. On the next slide will be multiple family group interventions. This is another broadly researched and highly successful method of group therapy for incarcerated adolescents that includes their families in multiple group family intervention, or MFGI. This was a clinical research project to develop a program that addresses the need for an effective treatment that is still affordable for juveniles and their families. Parents of incarcerated adolescents can be negatively affected psychologically, and support from other members of the group can be positive influence for them as well. The MFGI program consists of 8 weeks in which adolescents and family members work with a facilitator to learn a 6-step method for improving interactions and changing patterns from an affect, regulation, and attachment perspective. The first 3 steps of this process focus on decreasing the patterns of escalating negative responses. The last 3 steps concentrate on expressing the internal feelings of each participant to be better understand each other's views and adjust personal patterns and responses. MFGI directly addresses the issues experienced by incarcerated adolescents and their families prior to release. This includes attachment problems that can be the root of adolescents' negative behaviors. Affect regulation is a focus of MFGI and directly works with the issues incarcerated adolescents face. Affect regulation helps the participants' ability to act and respond to intense positive and negative emotions. MFGI can also help to support family members by creating a network of other families in similar situations that can continue after the program. In Keeley's research, they found adolescents who participated in the program showed a recidivism rate no higher than 44% in a 6-month follow-up assessment. Both of these forms of group therapy for the incarcerated adolescent population have shown increasing levels of success and are incredibly impactful to the participants, their families, and the success of their futures.
There are various strengths and limitations with the research and literature found on this population. One of the strengths for this population found is the trauma on this population is regularly acknowledged. The different levels of trauma experienced by the adolescents are examined, such as mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual trauma. For adolescents who are incarcerated, one of the most prevalent ways to measure trauma is by measuring adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs, which are a variety of types of trauma, including psychological, physical, or sexual abuse, living in poverty, domestic violence, living with someone with chemical dependence, and/or having a family member who was previously imprisoned. Another strength is the cultural experiences of individuals within this population are also acknowledged and affirmed in the literature. The background of adolescents who are incarcerated is regularly examined and compared in the literature. For example, the experiences of a Latin 16-year-old and a Black 16-year-old who are both recently incarcerated are likely to differ due to each other's cultural backgrounds and social connections, upbringing, or perhaps even religious preferences. Another strength is the development of adolescents who are incarcerated is examined in longitudinal studies. This gives insights into the effects of being incarcerated at a young age and how development may be impacted. Health of the individual is examined over a span of their lifetime and compared to control groups, as well as any mobility issues, depressive symptoms, and suicidal thoughts. Intergenerational risks of incarceration are also regularly identified. Children of parents who were previously incarcerated or are currently incarcerated have a significantly higher risk for being incarcerated themselves. The literature focuses on the experiences of parents who are incarcerated and the outcomes of children with incarcerated parents. Parental incarcerated is not just considered a risk factor, but can also be an adverse childhood experiences as well. While there are strengths in the literature, there are also limitations in the literature. While the literature regularly acknowledges the cultural background of the adolescents who are incarcerated, it rarely distinguishes the experiences between adolescents by gender. For example, a 14-year-old Black girl who is recently incarcerated is not likely to have the same experiences in the system as an 18-year-old white male who is recently incarcerated. However, the literature would commonly focus on the experiences between males. Even within literature that addresses the issues faced by certain communities and adolescents with similar cultural background, gender is rarely a topic of discussion, with the majority of the literature focusing on male participants in studies and no female participants. There is evidence that adolescents who are incarcerated or have been incarcerated are more likely to become pregnant during adolescence. However, the existing literature cannot determine if certain environmental or social factors of incarceration differentially influence child rearing during adolescence.
So now we're going to delve into some of the evidence-based interventions and tools and techniques used with this population. So the three on this slide are more individual based. The first is life skills training. It's a classroom-based program that targets teen drug use, violence, and other risky behaviors by teaching youth personal self-management skills, social skills, and information and resistance skills. It spans across 30 sessions, typically for about 3 years. The sessions titrate as time goes on each year. So the first year will have 15 sessions, the second year you'll have 10 sessions, and the third year will be 5 sessions. Some of the big theories that kind of stick out from this intervention are social learning theory, because it teaches youth to resist peer pressure and pressuring social situations, and problem behavior theory. Some youth believe that participation in certain behavior will assist them in achieving outcomes such as looking older or tougher. This intervention equips youth with coping strategies and communication skills and decision-making skills to go around those problem behaviors. The next is social problem solving, a cognitive behavioral intervention designed to assist youth with interpersonal stress. Utilizes 1-hour small group sessions to target social information processing. The intervention has been shown to successfully reduce the outward expression of anger. Social problem solving focuses on identifying effective solutions to everyday problems, and depending on the client's intended outcomes, the intervention may change the situation or the emotions that arise as a result of the problematic situation. The next is trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy. This intervention targets negative behavioral and emotional responses as a result of a traumatic event, such as depression, anxiety, fear, or PTSD. The children and their caregivers usually have 12 to 15 meetings lasting about 50 to 90 minutes each. The purpose of this intervention is to correct maladaptive beliefs and assist non-offending parents with coping with their own emotional distress and how to best support their child. Some of the key tools that stick out within this intervention are cognitive behavioral therapy and family therapy. So the next slide more so focuses on family therapy. So the first is risk reduction through family therapy. This is an exposure-based integrative therapy used with youth who have experienced trauma. The intended target has PTSD, depression, substance use, high risk. Risk reduction through family therapy, exposure-based integrative therapy used with youth who have experienced trauma. It's intended to target PTSD, depression, substance use, high-risk sexual behavior, and so much more. This individualized and person-centered therapy focuses on 7 main components, including psychoeducation, family communication, substance use, coping, PTSD, dating and decision-making skills, and reduction of recidivism and risk. The key tools that stick out within this intervention are ecological therapy and exposure therapy. The next is multisystemic therapy, also known as MST. It was originally developed to assist antisocial youth at risk of out-of-home placement. This intervention was adjusted to assist youth with other challenges. Treatment spans across 3 to 6 months with intensive direct home-based contact, adding up to 60 to 100 hours. The individual who usually works with the family has master's level degrees, and usually the team consists of 2 to 4 therapists. These therapists address risk factors and empower the caregivers to obtain and utilize skills necessary to effectively care for their child. Some of the key tools seen in this intervention are strength-based approach, socio-ecological framework, and person-centered. The strength-based approach, the therapists communicate in a positive manner and have an optimistic outlook. For socio-ecological framework, the therapist assists with identifying strengths within each component of the system, such as their peers, parents, or school, or within their community. And then the goals are set and outcomes are determined on an individual level. So it really hits hard on that person-centered component. And the last is functional family therapy. This is a strength-based intervention primarily focusing on risk and protective factors within a youth's environment. This intervention typically consists of 12 sessions across 3 to 4 months. Within these sessions, the therapist motivates the family to change and strengthen family ties by targeting goals that prevent youth recidivism, harm, and out-of-home placement. This intervention consists of 5 phases, including engagement, motivation, relational assessment, behavior change, and generalization. There are many more interventions. These are just the main 6 that are commonly used. So a quote by the director of the Foundation Juvenile Justice, Nate Ballas. He quoted, "Juvenile detention should never be normal or routine. The negative effects of detention on young people and the continued racial disparities that define juvenile detention in this country, our systems must explore every option and confine young people only in extraordinary cases."
My name is Allison. I'm so glad to be with your family today, Sarah. I'm sure that it's nice to see some familiar faces. How are you doing today?
I'm good. It kind of feels unreal that I'm going to be home soon. I'm excited and I'm nervous. So I'm just kind of anxious.
I'm sure. I know, Sarah, you have been in your juvenile detention facility for almost a year. You're coming up on your release date. You're set to go home. I know that some of the dynamics of home have changed since you've left. Your mom is working really hard to go ahead and be on a better medication schedule. Your cousin Destiny has been in and been a really helpful stabilizing force for the family. And of course, Taylor has grown up so much in the years since you've seen her. I know that she's missed you a lot. But that probably presents some conflicts too for how you're going to re-enter the family dynamic, given some of the struggles and some of the dysfunction.
Yeah.
I'm not looking
I'm
forward
excited
to
to see my little sister. That's for sure.
I know. I'm sure Taylor's excited to see you too. Taylor,
Yeah.
how has it been without your big sister at home?
It's been great. I've been totally good.
Well, that's good. Is there anything you're excited to do when Sarah gets home? I know that you all have exchanged some telephone calls and, briefly seen each other at the reunification home that Sarah's in now as she works to transition back to your house. How have those gone?
It's all right. We don't really talk that much when I call. And there's nothing really to talk about when I visit her.
That makes sense. I mean, I think sometimes she probably forgets that you're 7. So I know that reunification has always been, it's a tricky subject. And, I know, Destiny, you are an inspiration, having really been set on a straighter path since your previous incarceration. And I know that that has to provide some maybe clarity to Sarah, that she can come home and look to you as maybe a model, or maybe someone that she can work with to provide some stability as we reintegrate her into this environment that's been a little foreign for the last year. How do you feel about that, Destiny?
Um, I'm I'm very happy to be able to assist my cousins in this manner because, like you said, I was kind of in the same place as Sarah a few years ago, and I like to think that I've turned things around, and I'd like to be able to assist them in the best way I can to ensure they're all getting the best supports and how I can contribute and assist them.
Sarah, how does that make you feel? I noticed that your body language, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong in Destiny being a good support for you. How do you feel about that? And remember, everything in this session, we want to normalize what's going on. This is hard stuff, and we are hoping through this new program in the county to provide some enhanced resources to really support not just you, Sarah, but your whole family, so that this is your first and only brush with juvenile detention in our system. But how does it feel? So this is a safe environment for you to share those feelings. Destiny is not going to hold anything. No one is going to hold anything against you for being honest with your feelings. But we really do want to explore where you are and how you feel about that.
Yeah, I am over my mom and like my sister comparing me to Destiny all the time. Like, oh, she's got a job now and she does this and all these things. And it's like the expectations
Well,
are that
Destiny plays with me.
I'm sorry, I'm just like not the sister or whatever you wanted, but like I'm just expected to come home and I'm just supposed to be this perfect person. And I wasn't before and I'm still not. And I'm just trying to figure it out. But like, just because Destiny's older and she got to figure it out and she's like besties with Taylor, then I'm supposed to be this perfect sister and daughter now. And it's just not realistic.
Well, Sarah, thank you for sharing that. I think that that is a very valid point. But I think it's also important for you to remember that no one is expecting you. Your expectations and your experience is going to be different than Destiny's. No one is expecting you to be Destiny, just like no one is expecting you to be Taylor or your mom. But
Does
they
my
do
mom know
want,
that?
well, that's why I think you have all of us. I think that your mom, has struggled with her mental health, and that's been hard for you. And I think it's okay to admit that that's been hard, and work through that, because we want to give you the proper supports. As you know, most juvenile and youth, or most youth that are incarcerated, have a history of mental illness and family history of mental illness. So if we can help you and help your mom through some programs and regulating medication, and those are ways that we can support you and ensure that you are able to set your own course, and no one is going to expect you to be anyone else other than you. But we also want to set some goals for both you and your family for how we can get past this period of your life, because you are young and you have a whole future ahead of you. And Taylor and your mom and Destiny, they love you and they want to support you. And part of that is that we want you to tell us how we can support you, what sort of routines, what sort of guidelines we can put in place to make sure that you feel in control of your situation and can manage expectations for your behavior and your life.
Yeah, I just like can already tell my mom is like on my ass, like just like she was before. And there's all these expectations, and she doesn't do the same thing. She doesn't show up, but I'm supposed to all the time. And I'm supposed to get a job and do all things that Destiny did. And I'm just
You're
expected
the
to be this
oldest.
perfect.
You're the oldest, and you need to set a good example. And that's why I put more pressure on you. I mean, I can't help that. I mean, you know, I want you to set a good example for your sister.
And
I mean,
sometimes in a family setting, both things can be true at the same time. And we need to understand that. Your mom wants you to be a good example. And you also need your mom to be a good example for you too. And Kathy, it sounds like it might be good for you as the head of the household to find some routines and provide some stability, not just for Taylor and Destiny and yourself, but also for Sarah as she comes home. And I know you seem a little frustrated with that. And do you want to tell me why?
Well, I have the kind of job that my schedule changes every week, you know, and
Okay.
it changes all the time. It's a lot of moving parts. And what I'm glad you're coming home, but Sarah, but I just don't want the fighting. I mean, I just can't. I'm bracing for that part, you know, and I just, you know, I'm doing the best I can. I work full time and I work double shifts. Sometimes I work all night, and I don't know what more to do for you. I don't know. What can I do for you? What are you expecting from me when you come home?
I just like want to be a 16-year-old. Like I feel like I've lost the last year of my life here, and I want to come home and like hang out with my friends over the summer and do the stuff that I was doing, but like not get in trouble. And obviously, but like I want to be a 16-year-old and like just hang out and like see my friends and do fun stuff and not expect to be like an adult now because of the stuff I've experienced.
Yeah, but can you stay out of trouble?
Okay, so I'm going to interject for just a minute because I think that Sarah very much wants to stay out of trouble and we don't want to jump to any conclusions. This is a fresh start for Sarah and Mom. I know that you care very much for your family and very much for Sarah's success. And what I'm hearing, and everyone correct me if I'm wrong, but that Sarah does want to be it is a natural thing for her at 16 to want some independence. Obviously, she has had independence in a very difficult setting for the last year, but I think she also needs her mom, but she wants to know what to expect of you. And I know that you, as the head of household, have a lot of responsibilities, both financially, emotionally, physically, even just showing up for your kids. Do you think that there's a way that we can merge these things together and maybe create a family routine, a family schedule so that we know when there's family time, when there are planned dinners, when, you know, even for Taylor, her activities and when you need Sarah's help? Is that something that you think that might be possible to kind of give a little more structure to your family while still allowing both some of that independence and also her understanding where you need to be so that you can provide for your family?
I think that all that sounds really great and all, but
Mhm.
I feel like what's lacking is cooperation. And, you know, the world doesn't revolve around you, Sarah, and I don't know where you are all the time. You don't know where I am all the time, but we have to like get to a place where we can cooperate with each other. And I feel like completely disconnected from you. You do whatever you want. You're like a loose cannon. The idea of stability and structure, I don't know where that can come from when our communication is so bad. I feel like you want to go in your direction, I'm going in my direction, Taylor's on the side, and you know, and Destiny, your cousin's real important to you, but there's no unity in our family, and I don't know what to do about that.
Well, I do think that that is one way that this group in particular can help. It is a place where we can come and address concerns, provide some structure and guidance as to how to unify your family. And in doing so, sort of normalize that this is a situation that is played out in many homes across our country, and kind of lean on us for some support as we work to get you all in a better situation. Sarah will thrive in an environment in which everyone is thriving, and that's what we want. We want stability for Sarah in conjunction with stability for everyone in the house. So I do hear that I think that maybe one of the first things I realized, this is our first meeting. I'm hoping that through this program and using sort of this, some of these techniques for a group therapy setting, is that we can all commit to meeting once a week and kind of trying to work through some of these issues and providing supports so that you all feel like you're heard, and challenges can be resolved in a way that works for everyone. Does that sound like something that we can agree to participate in and give it a try?
I mean, if my mom can, like, she's always got 30 other priorities other than us, so.
This is important. I mean, I want this fighting to stop. I want this to work out. You're my daughter, I want everyone to get along. So yeah, I mean,
I'll only do it if Destiny does it.
I'll certainly attend as long as the family feels I can continue to be a support system. I don't want the family to continue to compare Sarah to me. My success was my own path, and Sarah's gonna pave her own path. I just kind of want to be a support system to Sarah because I was in the same place as her, and being in that detention center is a lot, and it requires a whole nother level of independence that I wasn't ready for. And that's not to say that Sarah's not ready for it, but we've been through the same thing. So I would definitely attend as long as the family wants me to continue.
Sarah, how does that make you feel?
That makes me feel really good because I feel like that's like the first I've heard of like just straight from Destiny about like not having these expectations of me and not wanting to push me in a certain direction that's not the exact same as hers. So it feels really nice to have someone that has experienced it too, because like, yeah, it's horrible in here and I hate it. And like, I am really ready to come home, and I do miss my family a lot. So it'll be really nice to have someone who's been in this environment and like knows how hard it is to get back into your normal routine.
I think that's lovely. And Destiny, I think that you will be able to provide such a great support. And especially I hear from Sarah that she wants to chart her own course, and just knowing that the expectation is lifted for you to repeat the same thing that's made Destiny successful doesn't have to be the same thing that makes you successful. And I hope that you know that you have the support of your family as well as me, that want you to be successful and to avoid incarceration again. We want to work to avoid that. And part of that is we want to address and improve all the mental health issues in your family as best we can. So if there are struggles or things that are hard, know that we are a resource, and that some of the things that we'll be working on, such as reframing, could help so that we can sort of reduce any risk going forward.
That sounds good.
I know that we are getting to the end of our session. And I know that one of the things in our next one that I would like to focus on, of course, this being a group therapy session, I want you all to come up with some ideas and things that you want to bring to each session. Because ultimately your participation is what will make this group have the most impact on your lives. And so I think that if I can kind of end with, first of all, I guess, just to go back, is there anything that we didn't bring up that anyone would like to bring up before we start closing out? Anything that we're nervous about in the next week? Anything that things that have gone well in the last week that we wanted to celebrate before we get our homework for next week?
I just want to tell everybody that I appreciate y'all like coming here and doing all this because I know it's because of me, and I know I'm having an attitude, but I think I'm just frustrated and nervous. And I am really excited to come home and be with y'all again. And it means a lot that you're going to be here for me. So as long as we can all like maintain this dynamic and like show up for each other, that's what I really want and what I care about.
No, I'm very motivated, Sarah. I really want things to get better. So all we can do is try.
That is beautiful. And I really hope that we can continue to move forward with such vulnerability and grace. So thank you for that. In the next week, I would really like everyone to think about things that trigger them and things that sort of what you've used as coping mechanisms for those triggers in the past. Part of the therapy that we want to do is explore with everyone kind of how we respond to things so that we can work to reshape our responses in the future. We want to be able to be very mindful of our approaches to difficult situations and then be able to sort of think things through and kind of respond not just with emotion, but with some reasoning. So I think part of that is just identifying our triggers, and part of what makes us sometimes make bad decisions. So if everyone could work on that in the next week, that would be really helpful. Doesn't need to be a long list, just one or two, mom yelling at me, or getting a bad grade at school, Taylor, or, not feeling like just having a hard day. What do you do when you have a hard day? So if everyone could think about that for our next session, that would be really helpful for our discussion, and also for me to be able to process through how we can reframe that and how we can think of different solutions to hard things going forward. Again, thank you all for your time today. I very much appreciate it. I'm very grateful for all the sharing that everyone did. And I look forward to seeing you next week.
Thank you.
See you next week.
Bye.
Bye.